r/NoSleep. Posted by u/BrenWillPohn. A vile stench, missing cats, and so many yellow eyes. It was a few weeks ago that I first noticed the stench. A stringent, chemical odor mixed with a sickly metallic sweetness and the stink of raw sewage. At first, it was just a slight whiff emanating up from the worn-out old garbage disposal in our kitchen. Sluggish to start, noisy and barely working, it was just one more thing that we hadn't gotten around to replacing yet. I chalked the smell up to food not properly disposed and went on with my day. Soon though, it was so rotten and thick that it was difficult not to gag if you brought your face near the sink. It was like being shouted at by someone who hasn't brushed their teeth in years, hot, humid and festering. My fiancée, Miriam, had commented on it too. She mentioned the old disposal when I asked her what she thought the source was. But then, it started to come from the bathroom sink as well. We decided to call a plumber to see if he could figure out just what was causing it. A rough-looking man of around 50 showed up the next day, equipped with a large, metal-bodied mechanical snake. I saw him wrinkle his nose as the smell hit him. He set to work under the garbage disposal and soon the machine was off and whirring like a small, gas station air pump. It wasn't long before he found something. "Oh man!" I heard him exclaim. "I think we found the culprit." He was trying to smile while covering his mouth with his fist and turning away from the sink. I hopped up and went over. The smell hit me like a wave in the face as I came closer, thick as congealed slime and even more rancid. He motioned for me to have a look, all the while still looking amused and like he might be sick at the same time. When I saw what it was I felt my stomach heave. Half of a very large rat was impaled on the snake. What little remained of its bottom half was ground up and ragged, like a piece of gristle that had to be spit out because it couldn't be fully chewed. "Holy shit," I said, covering my mouth and pointing to the mess where the rear of the animal used to be. "Did the snake do that?" "It's possible. Could have also been other rats. They do that sometimes." I nodded in acceptance. He wrote up a bill and left. We figured that would be the end of it. A few days later though, the air of our home was once again filled with the putrid odor of decay. I called the plumber to have another look. He showed up that afternoon and went to work with his rumbling machine again. This time, it was a squirrel, the front half of it chewed off below the shoulders. The normally fluffy tail hung long, wet and limp behind it. We both stared in awe, eyes wide and mouths covered. "Rats did that?" I questioned while trying not to vomit. "Yeah, why not? Rats are like pigs. They'll eat pretty much anything if they're hungry enough. How would a squirrel even get in there?" "Probably went into the sewers through a storm drain, looking for food. Follow the scent here. My advice would be to use the disposal less and, when you do, grind up the food better. You're clearly attracting animals with all the crap you're shoving down there." I shrugged in defeat. He wrote up another large bill then was on his way. Later on, I talked to Miriam about what the plumber had said. She nodded in agreement and said it sounded like good advice. For a while anyway, that seemed to be the end of it. Then one of our cats went missing. She was the smaller of the two, the runt of the litter. When we put the cat food out one morning, only a single cat showed up. The other bowl of food sat lonely and untouched. I brought up the time she had been sick and had hid in the basement for a day, so we just put her food aside for when she decided to come back around. When it came time for their evening meal, again, one bowl sat with an empty space in front of it, filled with food that would not be eaten. We searched in closets, under furniture and throughout our cluttered basement where she had hid before. We called for her outside and in the garage while shaking a bag of treats. Nothing. It was almost as if she had never existed in the first place. After a while, we found ourselves searching less and less. Unlike humans, cats can only go a few days without food and, if she had gotten outside somehow, a 6-pound cat isn't much of a match for the hawks, coyotes and foxes that dwell nearby. It was about this time that the smell returned. The noxious, putrid fumes now emanated from every drain on the first floor and were beginning to make their way upstairs. We barely slept, our minds already spent from pondering what awful fate had befallen our lost pet, and now this. I had called the plumber when we first noticed the smell had returned, but he'd been too busy to get to us right away. By the time he did, we were spending most of our time outside. He sent the mechanical snake down the drain again, weaving its way through dark and dripping labyrinths in search of whatever putrid mess was in our pipes. This time though, it came up empty. "There's got to be something down there," I said. "Or else why would it smell so bad?" "I know. The snake just isn't getting it this time for some reason. I'm going to try going through the trap in the basement. I'm not sure it'll make a difference, but I'll give it a shot. I waited upstairs while he did. Within a few minutes I heard a loud crash, as if he'd fallen into some of the plethora of junk in our cellar. I yelled down asking if he was alright, but got no reply. I just heard frantic bustling as if he were trying to get his stuff together. I was about to go down to check on him when he came rocketing up the cellar stairs with all of his things in tow. His face was as pale as Arctic ice and his expression just as cold. He pushed his way past me and out the door. "What happened?" I yelled, but he just got in his van and left. Later, I tried phoning him, but my calls just kept getting sent to voicemail on the first ring. That night, my dreams were filled with small, clicking sounds, like large, insectal footsteps, coming from all around me. In the morning, Miriam spoke of dreams in which something hard and pointed was touching her leg as she slept. I looked around a bit for anything suspicious, but dreams seemed the most likely explanation. In the next few days we tried calling other plumbers, but got nothing but a series of voicemails again. The few that did answer said they were booked out for weeks. I was starting to wonder if the first plumber had blackballed us for some reason. It took a while, but we were finally able to make an appointment for the following week with a handyman named Dizzy, whose number we found on Craigslist. I wondered to myself which prison he'd gotten that nickname in. In the meantime, we just have to wait. The next 2 nights the stench got so bad we had to leave the bedroom windows open and turn fans on. The dreams continued and we slept little. On the 3rd night, I woke up to Miriam screaming. "What the fuck? What's wrong? Something just bit my leg," she yelled frantically. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming again?" "No. This was not a dream." "Are you sure it wasn't Randy?" I said, referring to our remaining cat. "Yes. He doesn't bite, and even if he did he wouldn't bite that hard." As she was saying this she pushed back the bedsheets to expose her calves and ankles. There, on her left leg, was a close grouping of puncture wounds, almost like those of a snake or spider, except there were 6 holes, from 6 teeth. We scoured the room for whatever did it, checking in the closet, under the bed and in the bathroom. We found nothing. Except the footprints. They were a series of closely set, sharply hooked, teardrop-shaped marks, running perfectly parallel like a set of train tracks, spaced about 8 inches apart. I felt my skin crawl and I watched Miriam shudder. What kind of creature could have made them we had no idea. The tracks started at the foot of the bed, next to where Miriam slept, in a splatter of some inky black secretion that gave off a dirty chemical odor, like that of an abnormally pungent sewage treatment plant. They led away towards the door. We followed them out of the bedroom and down the stairs where they turned left through the dining room. About halfway past the dinner table, they faded out, the stinking, slimy muck that they were formed from having gradually worn off. It was clear, however, where they were headed. The door to the basement was a mere 15 feet away. I took Miriam to the ER for the bite. There was much discussion amongst the staff over what kind of animal was responsible, but no conclusions were made. One doctor assumed it had to be the cat and that the configuration was just an illusion created by multiple bites. That didn't make sense to me, but I kept my mouth shut as it didn't matter anyway. They cleaned the wound, bandaged it, then gave her antibiotics for any possible infection. After that we were on our way. Understandably, Miriam didn't want to stay in the house anymore. So when we got back we began to pack up our things. I called my parents and explained to them what was happening and that we'd be coming over. However, it wasn't long before we realized that something was off. Randy, our friendly and energetic feline, should have been winding around our ankles and meowing at us, curious as to what we were up to at such an ungodly hour. But he wasn't. His absence was conspicuous. Again, we looked behind furniture, under beds, in our many closets and in the garage. We shook the bag of cat treats in and outside of the house. Again, nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air while we were away. After talking it over a bit, we decided we couldn't leave him behind in this house with whatever terrible thing was lurking in it. I volunteered to stay behind and keep looking. Miriam would go ahead to my parents. She wasn't happy about it, but agreed. I searched the whole house again, looking in every nook and cranny for the furry little animal. I turned the first and second floors upside down. Still, nothing. However, I knew there was one area of the house we had been avoiding. I shuddered at the thought. Whatever foul thing had bitten my fiancée and possibly killed my 2 cats had gone down there, and was probably still there. I thought of my sweet little friend. I thought about him scared and in pain. I thought about never knowing what happened to him. I mustered up my courage, took a deep breath and walked towards the cellar stairs. Step by step, I descended the splintery old wooden risers, jumping at every little creaking noise they made. I tried in vain to control my breathing. My heart beat against my ribcage. I flipped the switch at the bottom and watched as the light slowly flickered on. I looked around at the mounds of clutter that were heaped almost everywhere throughout the gloomy space. They looked like burial cairns. I'd never realized the horror of it until now. If something, cat or otherwise, were hiding in the house, this was the perfect place for it. Almost anything could be hiding in a mess like this. I began to hesitantly search through the piles of junk, looking back over my shoulder constantly. I kept silent and listened intently for any movement as I looked in stacks of old boxes, on crowded shelves and in the dusty, cobwebbed corner behind the boiler, the tired old fluorescent lights flickering and buzzing above me. I looked up in the rafters, behind the pipes that ran along the walls and in the shadows under the stairs, constantly alert for anything that might bite or claw or sting. Once again, nothing. Just when I was about to give up, I came to the trap that the plumber had been working at the other day. Something looked off about it. The screw cap was where it should be, but it was askew, as if it were just resting there and not screwed in. I tested it and, sure enough, it was just sitting there. The threads had been stripped, violently by the look of it. On the pipes surrounding it was the stinking black fluid we had found in the bedroom. Within that, were little droplets of blood. My hands shaking uncontrollably, I reached for the cap again. As I pulled it out of the hole, the stench hit me hard, like a bucket of rotten fish guts thrown in my face. I gagged violently, barely keeping down last night's dinner, then covered my mouth with my shirt. Slowly, I lowered my head to look within, hoping to God that I wouldn't see the remains of my poor dead cat inside. I had to look though. I had to be sure I wasn't leaving him behind in this awful place. I brought my eyes level with the opening, took a deep breath, then gazed into the depths. I could see just to an elbow in the pipe, about 6 feet in. It was pitch dark, but I thought I could just make out the faintest movement at the corner. The hairs on my neck stood on end. My breathing quickened. Randy? I called shakily. The movement was clearer this time and I could hear the clicking noises from my dreams. There was definitely something in there. I whispered his name again, then the thing in the pipe turned and faced me. The eyes. Oh my fucking God, the eyes. It was all I could see. There were so many of them, all moving as one. Glowing yellow embers void of any life or humanity. There must have been 60 of them, all part of one greater whole. I froze, too afraid to move, while simultaneously wanting nothing more than to run. The eyes sat motionless, but something moved below then. Slowly, 6 pairs of glowing translucent fangs emerged from a horrid, unseen mouth. I heard breath escape in a low hiss. I ran. My feet pounded on the stairs like hammers as I ran up towards the top. My heart smashed itself against my ribcage. I sucked air like I'd been trapped underwater. The clicking sounds were approaching fast behind me. I could see the garage door was just ahead of me, only a few yards from the top of the stairs. Instinctively, I reached out for it, overbalancing myself to the front. Hot, hard pain blasted my toes as my foot caught on the top riser. My body pitched forward. My face slammed into the linoleum floor. I don't remember much after that. Just dreams. Dreams of the insectal clicking, tapping all around me. Dreams of a wet chewing sound, like an animal leisurely eating raw meat. Dreams of a fiery pain below my knees. I awoke later in a murky daze, remembering nothing. I was lying on a narrow bed and held in place by nylon straps. The room bounced and swayed. I could hear sirens outside. There was medical equipment everywhere and a man sitting next to me with the letters EMT and a patch on his blue uniform. The word ambulance floated lazily through my brain. What happened? I asked the man almost drunkenly. It took a great effort to make my mouth form the words. Your fiancé called 911 after you didn't answer your phone. When they arrived, the police found you at the top of the basement stairs. You're lucky to be alive, he answered in a shaky, uncertain voice. Why? I asked. What happened to me? We aren't sure. Your leg. We were hoping you might not. What about my leg? I interrupted, raising my voice. He just sat there, staring vacantly at me. What happened to my leg? I shouted. He lifted the sheet that was covering my legs to reveal a bloody, bandaged stump where my left calf and foot should have been. Your leg. It was torn off below the knee. We couldn't find the rest of it. The next few days are mostly a blur for me, almost like watching a movie and fast forward, or listening to Charlie Brown's parents speak. I know that I was rescued about a week ago, and that I underwent successful surgery so that my wound would heal properly. I know that, Thanks to quick-acting medics and multiple blood transfusions, I didn't die from blood loss. I had lost almost a half-gallon. But the combination of trauma, exhaustion and powerful opioid-based pain medication has left my memory more than a bit fuzzy. I've done my best to write everything down as I remember it, and to do so when my head is clear. It hasn't been easy. The doctors say it could be 8 weeks before my wound fully heals and many months more before I'm fully able to walk again. They say a prosthetic takes time to get used to. I don't care though. I will heal. I will learn to walk again. I'm going to make sure of it, because whatever it is that did this to me is not going to live to tell about it. Things like that don't get to exist in this world. I don't care how long it takes. When I'm ready, I'm going to track that thing down, I'm going to find out what it is, and I'm going to erase it from the earth, forever. Whatever happens, from here on out, will be posted here for you all to see. Writing this down and sharing it has helped me to process these awful events, so I've decided to continue doing so. Wish me luck, though I doubt I'll need it. I plan to make my own from now on.